Hello, everyone. Kimsey here, and I am so glad to be here for our Monday Live. If you have been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, or if you have hypothyroid symptoms, but your doctor runs, the standard TSH, maybe T4, and they come back normal, but you definitely have like the thinning hair and the weight gain and the constipation and the cold extremities and the insomnia and all the symptoms, this is going to be a talk that you want to listen to. This is a client success story. So you're going to get a view into what it's like when working together, the process that we go through, the labs that we run, really give you a visual of what's possible and what results are possible if you've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's or if you suspect that Hashimoto's is part of your story. So before I jump into it, my name is Kinsey Berkwin. I'm an integrative nutritionist in my online nutrition and wellness practice called Progressive Health and Wellness, where I work with ambitious men and women who are struggling with their mental or physical health by taking a root-caused body-mind approach to optimize their overall health and wellness. So Karen is a client that came to see me about 6 months or so ago. And she had been recently diagnosed with Hashimoto's. She had all the symptoms, so it made sense. She actually had more classic presentation of hypothyroidism, which is why her doctor then went on to test antibodies, thyroid peroxidase antibody and thyroglobulin antibody. And those are the two antibodies that occur in Hashimoto's. Thyroid peroxidase antibody came back positive, like very high, like well above the lab reference range. And so her doctor diagnosed her with Hashimoto's. The recommendation was he prescribed levothyroxine, which is a thyroid replacement hormone. And that was it. And said, let's wait and watch, basically. And unfortunately, that's often the course of action. Is the line of thinking is that the autoimmune response that occurs in Hashimoto's, for those of you that don't know, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition that attacks the thyroid and leads to hypothyroidism. So the conventional thinking is that the immune system is going to destroy the thyroid. It's going to lead to hypothyroidism, and this person's going to need thyroid replacement hormone for the rest of their life. But oftentimes there's no effort to address the autoimmune component. Let me get that clear right off the bat. Hashimoto's is not just hypothyroidism. It is a whole other animal. It's an autoimmune condition. So in the case of Hashimoto's, the problem is not the thyroid. It is the immune system. The thyroid is simply an innocent bystander. So while hypothyroidism may, depending on how early it's caught, may progress, giving someone thyroid replacement hormone and saying that's the treatment, is like there being a pond and there's a dirty river that's dumping into this pond and we want to clean up the pond. So we go and just start cleaning up the pond, but we don't do anything about the dirty river that's dumping into it, right? The efforts are futile. So just getting that out there up front. So Karen had a friend that worked with us and had really great results. So she reached out. We had the first discovery call, free 15-minute call. It always goes 30. I block out 30, so that's okay. But the free call, we talked about what she's looking for, what's going on, how we can help. And then we got started with our 90-minute initial consultation, which is how we always get started. We have the option to include a comprehensive blood panel that looks at it's much more extensive than what your kind of routine blood work will be. So we ran that, even though Karen had just had her thyroid tested, there wasn't too much else that was tested. So we ran that. Our panel also showed the higher antibodies and the hypothyroidism, so confirmed what our doctor had seen. There were also some other things. So like her ferritin was low. She was having some anemia. iron deficiency, which can happen with Hashimoto's. It becomes kind of a vicious cycle because that worsens the Hashis and the Hashis can cause it. She had some dysglycemia. So she had some reactionary hypoglycemia. Her blood sugar wasn't balanced. Her hemoglobin A1C was at like 5.4, which is okay. It'll contribute to the Hashimoto's. It'll contribute to the weight gain. It'll contribute to the fluctuating energy levels. Her vitamin D was also low at, I believe it was 28. Those are some of the key findings that we saw in her blood. Oh, and she had higher homocysteine levels, which indicates for simplicity's sake, a functional B vitamin deficiency. So especially folate, but we can also glean B12, B6 levels. So, which also will contribute to a lot of the symptoms she was having. So the symptoms she was having were pretty classic. So she's in her early 40s, but she was having a lot of fatigue, especially in the afternoon and when she would first wake up in the morning. She was consistently kind of slowly gaining weight. So maybe a pound or two a month, but over time that had really accumulated. And she couldn't lose it. She was trying to change what she ate. She was trying to exercise more and it just wasn't budging. Her hands and feet were always cold. She noticed her hair was thinning. So like more hair was coming out in the shower. It was coming out in her brush. Her nails were breaking more often. She was starting to, well, she didn't notice this, but I noticed that the outer third of her eyebrow was thinning. That's something I always look at when I meet with people because that's a clear sign of hypothyroidism. She was having some constipation, so she was still having daily bowel movements, but they were frequently insufficient. So she would go to the bathroom. It felt incomplete. She still felt backed up and bloated. She had bloating. She had a little acid reflux, some insomnia. Her sleep wasn't great. And just low mood. I wouldn't call it like full-blown depression, but just like low apathetic mood. I think that summarizes it. Her menstrual cycle was still regular, but it was really heavy. But she was still getting it every month. I think that summarizes her symptoms. So her goal was obviously to have more energy. She wanted to lose like 10 pounds at that point. She wanted to have more like mental clarity. She was struggling with intermittent brain fog. And just to optimize her overall health and not, if possible, not have to be on thyroid hormone the rest of her life. Or if she was, at least be more receptive to it, right? Be in a place where her body wasn't so inflamed and like actively destroying her thyroid that her thyroid hormone levels were constantly fluctuating. So that's another big takeaway from this is if you have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism and been prescribed, let's say levothyroxine, but you've never been tested for antibodies. And you notice like every time you go to the doctor, your medication has to be adjusted or it's just not really working. Like they prescribed it and you didn't really notice improvements in your energy and hypothyroid symptoms. That's also a big red flag that the hypothyroidism may be a secondary problem. So those were the symptoms that she was having and a little bit of her history. So fast forward, we have that initial consultation. We ran the blood work, mentioned the lower iron, the low B vitamins, the dysglycemia, the vitamin D. So we went through those labs so that she fully understood the state of her health. And then in the initial consultation, I always send people home with some initial nutrition supplement recommendations to get started. And then we talk about the trajectory. If there's additional lab work that would be beneficial and what the trajectory will look like from there. And I tend to follow a very clear yet completely customizable trajectory. So there are certain phases or pillars, if you will, that we always cover, but the details of those pillars look different for each person. So we always start with the fundamentals. We start with nutrition, anti-inflammatory, whole foods, deep nutrition. We start with stress management and sleep optimization and movement. Then we most often run the stool test. That's like a standard with everyone I run. That's really that and the blood work, I would say, are the only standards. So we run a stool test, and then based on that information, the person's symptoms, history, et cetera, we move into a gut-focused protocol designed to optimize the health of the GI tract, the microbiome, digestion, absorption, inflammation, the gut lining. For some people, that protocol is like 30 days. We make a couple tweaks. They don't have a lot going on. For some people, it's 4 months. It's 120 days, and we're doing like very deep GI healing. So, and then from there, phase 3 is kind of take a step back and reassess how much progress has been made and where would be most advantageous to go next. For some people, that's maintenance. We've met their goals. They're feeling a lot better. They feel confident in how to continue on their own. For others, we may need to look at things like maybe hormones or have they made progress, but like there's lingering things. So we need to look at something like mold or metals or something like that. But ultimately, the goal is that everybody moves into maintenance. And that's when they've seen significant improvements in how they feel. And like I said, they have the confidence to keep doing this on their own, so they no longer need us. So that's the trajectory we went through with Karen. So in that first appointment, we talked about what I call the therapeutic diet. It's kind of a Mediterranean paleo style diet blend. So it's gluten-free, it's dairy-free, it's soy-free, it's corn-free. Those are the major hitters with autoimmunity. We greatly reduce grains. I don't always completely remove grains. It depends on the person, but we greatly reduce them. Sugar greatly reduced, whole foods, nutrient dense, as much organic as possible. Methods for improving metabolic flexibility. So we start moving to like 3 square meals, no snacks, spacing meals accordingly. Sometimes we'll incorporate intermittent fasting. So these are all things that we did in Karen's case. We did incorporate like very conservative 14 hours roughly of intermittent fasting. Like I said, the therapeutic diet. For supplements, I incorporated selenium. So selenium is really helpful for Hashimoto's. The research is very clear on that. Vitamin D to help boost her vitamin D closer to like 50, 60, 70, somewhere in there. Beef organs to help with the iron. So she had lower ferritin, like in the 20s, but her serum iron was about 100. So her iron was dropping basically, but it wasn't low enough to warrant supplementing with iron. But beef organs are a great source of iron cofactors and can really help prop her up, with the intention being once the autoimmunity gets more under control and her digestion is optimized, she can absorb it on her own from food. Let's see what else we did. I often use a medical food that includes, so like Vital Nutrients, Vital Clear, or Metabolic Detox, or Ultra Clear. There's different ones that I use, but the medical food is like 4 things in one. It's a multivitamin that also includes nutrients to support detoxification, inflammation, and gut health. Because in those first 30 to 60 days or so, we also want to support reducing inflammation and definitely support the drainage pathways. So that does that. And then lastly was magnesium glycinate to help with her bowel movements and her sleep. So, and then we ran the stool test, and Karen got after it. In our next appointment, 2-3 weeks later, we met, and she had made significant changes in her eating. She was taking all the supplements. She had completed the stool test. It was 3 weeks because we're reviewing the results of the stool test. And she had already noticed, like she had lost, I think like 5 pounds, and her energy was improving. Her sleep was getting better. She still had some constipation. She still had some reflux, but like she was moving in the right direction. So then we reviewed the stool test, and she had H. pylori. Helicobacter pylori, a little bit of dysbiosis beyond that, but in low pancreatic enzyme output. So the H. pylori, which is a stomach bacterium, interferes with the production of hydrochloric acid and just generally inflames the stomach, can also cause low pancreatic enzyme output and maldigestion and dysbiosis from that point down, really and truly. So we move into the gut focus protocol. I love this product called Gastromend for H. pylori. So we implement that for 30 days. We implement a digestive enzyme. We implement Saccharomyces boulardii, probiotic. We did, let's see what else. I think that's all we did at first for the first 30 days. And then as we're focusing on optimizing her upper GI, afterwards we moved into we only did phase 1 of Cellcore's para protocol, para 1 and 2. I love their products. Sometimes we'll go on to do their full protocol depending on the severity of symptoms, etc. In her case, we didn't need to. There wasn't a whole lot going on, and she was noticing such improvements in her digestion, even just from like diet and from the H. pylori protocol. So we did para 1 and 2 for 30 days. That has more broad spectrum antimicrobial and like toning effects. It really has a great toning effect on the intestine. So it helps like rebalance the GI terrain. It helps modulate the immune system. It's gentle, like people generally respond to it well. So we did that for 30 days while also bringing in like more broad diversity probiotics. So introducing more of the bifido and the lactobacillus. And then after that phase, we went into more of a rebuilding phase where we implemented like colostrum to support the GI immune system. We brought in much more diverse microbiome or probiotics. We brought in some prebiotics. I love partially hydrolyzed guar. That's one of my go-tos. Nutrition like asparagus, artichoke, pomegranate, green tea, etc. And then your classic gut lining support. So I don't remember what the product was called, GI Response, I think. And it has like marshmallow and aloe and glutamine and kind of your classic gut lining support. So all of that, the gut focus protocol that I just described, took 90 days. So it was like 30 days on the pylori focus, 30 days on the more kind of overall GI support, and then 30 days on the rebuilding phase. So all in, that takes us to about 5 months or so of working together. And at this point, Karen is having 2 bowel movements per day. They're full, they're formed, sufficient. She's not having reflux. She's not having bloating. Like her energy is much better. She's at her goal weight. She's sleeping. Her mood's good. Like she just overall feels good. And most importantly, we reran thyroid labs. The antibodies were still positive. That can happen. Like antibodies can persist despite, so in other words, antibody count the research shows, does not correlate with disease severity. So somebody can still have positive antibodies. We'll often see them drop for sure, but they'll still be above the lab reference range. They'll still be positive. But what we really look at is how does the person feel? And most importantly, what are their thyroid numbers look like? So the TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, all of those came beautifully within line. And it mimicked in how she felt. So she talked to her doctor about being able to get off of the thyroid medication at some point. They moved forward with that. Her thyroid number stayed the same. She was still looking really good, feeling really good. And that's how we moved her into maintenance. So we started introducing some of the foods back in, but she felt best if she still avoided gluten and dairy. And then at least for a period of time. And we talked about how to like continue trying that because her health can change. She ate soy and corn kind of intermittently just when she was going out, but not as a regular part of the diet. She like prioritizing protein, exercise, both of those things helped. Breath work that we had gotten her started doing, that made a big difference in her stress. And then we moved to a maintenance supplement plan. It's like multivitamin, vitamin D, fish oil, sometimes a probiotic. If the person's not histamine intolerant, I don't do a probiotic and I just have them eat fermented foods kind of throughout the week. Yeah. And that was it. So we still stay in touch. She's, obviously I said 6 months ago, so she's still doing well. But that, when we think about the trajectory that she could have gone on had she not done any of this, like sometimes people report back, they're like, oh, I don't know, like It's an investment of money. It's investment of time. I have to change my diet in all these ways. Like, I just don't know. And a powerful reframe, a really powerful question I like to ask is, I get it. It is an investment, time, money, energy, but like, what is the real cost of doing nothing? And Karen's story really embodies that. Had she just taken the advice of her doctor, made no changes, taken her thyroid hormone, like, who knows where she would be now? But I can tell you, it wouldn't be better. It would not be feeling better. But think about where she would be in 10 years, 20 years. These things, especially autoimmune, they do not get better on their own. They will not get better without making intentional changes. So that is my advice to you, is really think about, is this your story? Are you seeing yourself in this story? And where could you be in the next 6 months? There is hope. There's always a cause. There is, and your body is absolutely capable of healing. So if you are ready to make that leap and finally find answers and solutions to your nagging Hashimoto symptoms and finally put it into remission, I've dropped the link to my website below, progressivehealthandwellness.com. There you can schedule a free 15-minute call. Like I said, the call always goes 30 minutes, but you can schedule the free discovery call. And let's just chat. Let's chat about what symptoms you're noticing, what concerns you have in general, what challenges you have, what you're looking for, what are your goals. I'll share about how I can help, the practice, what the process looks like. If we feel like it feels like a good fit for both of us, then we'll talk about how to get started. And if not, that's okay too. So, hope this talk was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye.